welcome back to Underrated Movies. I'm your guy, I'm your man, Mr. Alton Henry. And today I would like to talk to you of another film that I think is severely underrated and doesn't get much attention now, unfortunately. And the movie's almost a decade old now. Of course, it's a decade old. Who would want to pay attention to a movie that's a decade old? Duh! Right. But we've entered into a world where there's so much material to watch, so much stuff so many options. Yet there is only a few, or I would say a handful of films and TV shows and properties that try to do things different and experiment. Thus, the film I would like to talk to you about is Paul Thomas Anderson's underrated cult classic Inherent Vice, starring Joaquin Phoenix, Benicio del Toro, Josh Brolin, Catherine Watterson, Martin Short, Owen Wilson, Reese Witherspoon, Gina Malone, and Maya Rudolph. Which really it's about a pothead private eye investigator who is investigating the mysterious disappearance of his former flame and a mysterious rich tycoon who's suddenly gone missing. And this film, advertised as Paul Thomas Anderson's first comedy, I believe. No, I think this is a second comedy. I think it's second dramatic comedy. This film is very hard to follow because there's a lot of story elements that are introduced that don't really get revolved, that you're trying to figure out that has anything to do with the main plot. There's so much interwove into this story that you don't even know what's really going on, similar to Tenet. But this one, you kind of really have to kind of like try to pay attention what certain plot details mean, or what does this mean. The film is narrated by some character on the side, as one of Doc Sportello's friends, and they narrate the film of what goes on, what Doc Sportello's thinking, just basically somebody that knows Doc, which you see that character sometimes in the film, but they're not really heavily involved in it, but they are actually telling the story. And this film, I wouldn't say it's slow. It kind of kicks in high gear within the first 10 minutes. Like it gets you like what the protagonist has to do, like it sets that up within 10 minutes. Then you're kind of given on this slow psychedelic drive, and this film feels like really like a real mystery film, but as a comedy, and that's rare. You don't really see that done a lot, where it's a mystery film, it's a crime mystery film, but it's also a comedy. It's more of a comedy than a mystery. Actually, it's more. I'm gonna take that back. I believe the comedy and the mystery are intertwined very well with a story that's so simple there, but is so complex on every single obstacle the main protagonist falls into. And the guy sometimes isn't. Well, I wouldn't say he's not likable, but the guy gets so high on certain parts in the film, or you feel like the guy is high all the time. Doc Sportello. This is based off a novel by Thomas Fenton, which I heard his literature work is very difficult to comprehend, which actually makes me kind of want to read it to kind of figure it out, because I mean that sounds interesting. From what I'm understanding, though, Paul Thomas Anderson made it exactly, well, I guess exactly how the mind of the author operates in this piece of work. When the character Doc Sportello is lost or confused on really anything he's trying to figure out, you as the viewer feel just as lost as he is, which makes it even harder to kind of figure out what is going on. And there's so much other plot details or side stories that are introduced and somehow that is connected to the main one, you get kind of lost. And it's actually kind of funny, but it's also convoluted at the same time, which wouldn't surprise me if viewers got frustrated watching this film, because if you don't understand the film in the first 40 minutes, you're like, I don't understand what's going on. And that's kind of how it was with this film, where when I watched this film, I kind of just let the film play out and kind of forget about like trying to understand what was going on, and kind of just understanding the characters more. Sometimes if I can't understand the story, I'll understand what the characters are trying to do. I don't know, that might be a little bit difficult. Maybe that might not make sense. But just to me, how I view the film, if the story gets a little bit too hard to decipher, I try to figure out who the characters are and what their motives are. Um, the cast is wonderful, but they kind of come and go. It's more of Joaquin Phoenix's movie, and this is actually one of my favorite role of his. The guy's hilarious in this film. Like this character comes off as clueless, but somehow is able to make it out of there without even really understanding his situation, or when he does understand it, it's kind of too late. Uh, Catherine Watterson, who I haven't seen much of her work since this movie came out. Like the only other two movies I've seen her in is Alien Covenant and mid '90s. She was great in here too. I thought she stole the scene in every scene that she was in. Benicio del Toro was great. Josh Brolin, I think, is the highlight of this film. I could tell you he had fun with this, and I think he was a. I don't know much of the book, but I can tell you this role suits him as this a-hole kind of like in charge character, but done in a very but set into a comedy, and the guy delivers it with such of a presence, but adds a little humor to it. The dude's phenomenal. When him and Joaquin Phoenix go back and forth about their odds, they have a little rivalry going on in this film. You can really show it, and it's hilarious whenever these guys kind of just butt heads. My favorite scene in here is when they actually meet at like a diner, and they're discussing the case, and then Josh Brolin gets so frustrated with him, it irritated, like he would like insult and outsmart him. And there's this scene where he's trying to, I think he's trying to speak Japanese about he wanted more food. I'm not gonna recite it, but it's kind of funny. And then there's a scene in there, a moment where I believe Josh Brolin's character is also investigating the case, and there's a moment where Joaquin Phoenix runs up and jumps on his car, and then Josh Brolin grabs him and starts beating the hell out of him. He started beating the hell out of him. Also, this movie's very intense. There's moments of intensity, but again, there's so much going on in the film, you do get kind of lost of what the film is really trying to, what the overall, like, I guess, resolution to this. This film ended on this I didn't know where the film was going, and I think that's a good thing because it keeps you kind of invested. Though it does test your attention span a bit, and what I mean by that is what I mentioned earlier. It's hard to kind of follow along what is going on. It kind of is. It is. I mean, I'll tell you straight up front. Like I have no idea what was going on. I still like there's still little plot elements I don't know much about, but I still enjoy what it was. I still enjoy that this film tried to do things differently and subverted your expectations of what you could have gotten in a film. And yeah, if you're just your casual moviegoer, I can probably tell you may not like this. But if you're a fan of really any of the actors I've mentioned, I would suggest you give this film a try. This movie is 2.5 hours long for a comedy drama. So let's just get that out there. It's long. It's kind. I mean, you feel the length, especially kind of towards the midway, where you do feel like the you do feel the runtime. You do feel the 149 minutes. You kind of want to know where it's going, and when it, I guess when the case is solved, you kind of, I'll leave that up to you, of what you believe or how the case kind of concludes, because it ends happily, but you're still kind of wondering if this part of the film officially wraps it up. Um, this film is great. I think it's Paul Thomas, and this is just my opinion. Okay? I think this is his best film, because I think this is his much more his most experimental film compared to Magnolia, which there's a little ending in Magnolia that's a little trippy, but this film I think is much more experimental because it experimented with the narrative. There's so much added in. It is a little complicated to kind of just try to pick pieces out and try to figure out what's happening in the film. Could this film worked out of without all the other actors in it and just cast somebody else? Maybe. But I actually like the idea of having like well-known actors cast into certain roles that may or may not have a big impact on the story. Um, that's just my taste. That's just my opinion on it. But I think this is one of my favorite Joaquin Phoenix films. This is my favorite Paul Thomas Anderson film, and I recommend you give it a try. Especially if you're looking for something that's a little bit challenging, a little bit different, something that's a little bit more of a pot stoner comedy. If you're looking for a good stoner comedy, I do recommend Inherent Vice. Comment below, let me know if you have seen it, what you thought about it. Let me know if you enjoyed it or if you despised it, or let me know. I just like to know your opinions about it. We're in an age where there's so many options, so many choices. What I'm here to tell you, I'm here to give you an option. Check out Inherent Vice, released in 2014. And what is your favorite underrated movie?